So thanks for joining us today. Mike and Lesley from the Havilland Aircraft Museum. Mike and Lesley are both trustees at the organisation, and they've come in to talk to us today for Trustees Week.
Right, my job title is Learning Coordinator, and within that I get involved with school visits, both visits on-site and off-site. I get involved with scout visits, work experience, and Duke of Edinburgh. Anything involving education, it ends up in my interest.
Diversity and inclusion and voice of the visitor. It's just making sure that everybody has a good time and enjoys the experience of the museum, because we've got a lot to offer, and it's about everybody just at their own level enjoying the experience and the whole benefit of what we can offer.
Purely anecdotally, we had a coffee morning for a Down syndrome group, and when that was over, I had a personal feeling that we had really helped somebody out. And I actually felt pretty good about being at the museum. So it was, yeah, we can make a difference.
I think the commitment is, you've got to think about the commitment to being a trustee, and that does bring quite a few hours per week extra that you would normally do, but again it's very rewarding because you're seeing behind the scenes as to how your organisation actually comes together. Sometimes are better than others, but because you do have issues that you as a board collectively have to try and sort out with your volunteers, and sometimes you have things that you as a board member in your own role has to sort out before you put that to the chair to really get to the bottom of it. But again it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding knowing that you're going to make a difference anyway.
Yeah, so I was going to say there are frustrations with trying to get things done. In some cases, particularly health and safety, you have to do it. I mean, there's no equivocating about that. But you know what you want to do, but it's trying to get the volunteers sort of on side to get it done. I've said, but you don't ever tell a volunteer to do something unless it's a safety issue. You ask, you try to cajole, you try to get them to see your point, but you don't ever tell anybody to do something. And that can be frustrating. And again, as Lesley said, the time, it's not just time at the museum, it's time at home. So it's sitting down to look at your emails, to go through and answer questions, respond to people who, in my case, a school group wants to come in, or a scout group wants to come in.
I mean, we're all pretty much got each other's backs anyway, haven't we? And we all have the chairman's, 110% agreements behind us. But I think generally we always ask each other. We put it to the board. We have informal meetings each week. We have a general board meeting once a month, which is quite involved. But there's always someone to ask, and there's always a backup.
Yeah.
So you're never on your own. Well, after being a volunteer for 5 or 6 years at the museum, seeing all the different aspects and the way it was run, I just really wanted to help make a difference to the new current board coming out of the pandemic. It was facing a lot of challenges, and I suppose really I'm the museum's coordinator of children's activities, games, generally the different age groups that come into the museum. So the sort of role was depicted for me really. So I fell into that.
Okay, my first career was in the US Navy and I was a pilot, so I've always been interested in aircraft and aviation. After retirement from the US Navy, Hertfordshire had a scheme to get people into classrooms, so I spent the next 20-some years teaching GCSE and A-level biology, GCSE science and A-level biology. When I retired in 2011, the museum is basically on the doorstep. I mean, I live in St Albans, and so I just turned up at the museum and asked how I could be a volunteer. A bit like Lesley was saying, I spent the longest time just doing general things. I mean, I've worked in a shop, I've been a steward, but generally just as an ordinary volunteer. And at one point, I was asked to become the volunteer coordinator, which I did. We had another volunteer who wanted to actually do that, and he did a better job than I did anyway, but we didn't have anybody as an education coordinator. At the time, I was the only person at the museum with any education experience, so I just took over the role of, which now learning coordinator. But yeah, again, like Lesley was saying, it started out as just being an ordinary volunteer and coming in to learn how the museum operated, to learn the personalities, that sort of thing. And I think from a general standpoint, it would be beneficial for anybody who wanted to be a trustee to probably start out as an ordinary volunteer, if for no other reason than to find out how the organization worked from the ground level.
Yeah.
I think that's really the one word that does come to mind is it's fun. I enjoy coming into the museum. I enjoy interacting with our visitors and the other volunteers. It's rewarding, particularly when we're working with either Duke of Edinburgh or work experience students. And it can also be frustrating, but all three make for an interesting day, an interesting week.
Mike and Lesley from the Havilland Aircraft Museum, thanks for coming in today. It's been really insightful hearing about your experiences as a trustee, and hopefully it will help other volunteers that might be considering becoming trustees to make those decisions, and help trustee boards to think about how they go about doing things and attracting people to be trustees.